Okay, here we go. Okay, so everybody here? Everybody here? Everybody have a book?
Almost everybody's here.
Who are this?
Josh.
Okay. Just stare in. I'm kind of crazy about this, but stare at the cover of your book. Somebody, actually, we have students who are working in New York City right now doing graphic design for books.
I do graphic design. I can do something for the fashion.
No, I mean somebody designed this thing. Somebody designed the cover of this book. Okay. What do you see on the cover of your book?
Independence Day.
Looks like the 4th of July on that book. Okay. Well, looks like what?
Like a feast.
Oh, let me see. Wait, just the cover, just the cover. What do you see? A feast? Let me see this.
It's like food and like everyone seems happy and
Everyone seems happy.
in the background you see the orange.
Mine thinks Civil War-ish because it's red and make Revolutionary War.
Yeah, I guess it could be like
red
red
and
flag.
Okay, so a little bit festive there. So some soldiers in the background.
Yeah.
Looking all Revolutionary War, you got red in the back, blue in the front.
It looks like there's some little secret group here in the middle. Okay. Look at this one. Look at this. Like, what's that?
That's old school. That's
Flag the company. Alright. See if you can find anything in this book about that picture.
Oh, okay.
The cover picture. See if you can find anything in this book about the picture on the cover.
Maybe right on the inside cover.
You know, playing something about the monkey.
Oh, really geek?
Yeah.
Really geek? Anything else about it?
Unidentified.
Artist unidentified.
What did you find in that picture? Mine is,
No, you're too far.
mine's like on the very
It's
first
just like
page.
third page.
Right.
Is anybody interested in graphic design or book art? Could they show the interest?
Yeah, this house is sort of trying to dog this.
Okay, you with me? Look at this. Check out this one. Look at the cover of this book.
I can do something like this. I can take the background. I can change the background. And I can,
that's cool.
Yeah, I can put different types of lettering. I just learn how to use Photoshop for my guy. He went to college with it.
Yeah.
He taught me different techniques there. You know, then he showed me things that he learned outside of school.
Yeah. No, listen. You got it. Look. You know, there's a girl named Colleen Reinhardt who was here the year before last, and she just graduated from design in New York, and she got a job at a firm that she interned at, and she's designing the covers of books like these. Yeah, very it's a good gig. My feeling is if that's an interest, if that were an interest of yours, you already have access to something in our class that you can reach out to somebody with. You know, you just find an interest, you just show an interest in the cover of this book. What else do you find on the cover of the book?
The title.
What's the title? The American Pageant. What's that mean? What's that mean? What's a pageant? You can look it up. You can use your laptop. What's a pageant?
I know a pageant
It's
to be
like-
like the little girl.
It's like a show for like displaying in a way
Yeah.
A beauty pageant.
If you Google the pageant, you
I've
get
never had
bar.
to define
A gun pageant.
A pageant
What?
can revert.
If you
can
Google
refer-
pageant, it comes up with a bar called the pageant.
Yeah.
A nightclub.
Possession,
Sometimes called the pageant
or
concert
ceremony
nightclub.
in Elaborate costume.
How about this one?
Medieval pageant.
Okay. How about this one? See, I haven't read this. I didn't. It's a public entertainment consisting of a procession of people in elaborate, colorful costumes. If we took, let's argue. This is the cover of this book. What's in this book? What is this book, according to the authors? Yeah, it's kind of the parade, the display, the procession of what's been characteristic about American culture or U.S. culture over the course of those years. So that makes sense. What else do you find on the cover?
It's cool that they.
What?
I think it's cool that they have it like all festive up in the front and in the back. It's kind of like army like going to war.
That's kind of interesting.
So it has that like visual effect that like you guys can focus on.
And then is that where the country started, or is that the way it's kind of always been one way or another? Some people would argue that we fight the American Revolution over and over, year after year, month after month, day after day. Anybody see the 50th celebration of the March on Washington yesterday? That was one of the big messages. Our work is not done. Okay. Yeah.
One thing that stands out to me is that on my book it shows the 12th edition.
Ooh, nice find.
Then also because just you can never know how reliable a source is because words can be changed and altered, being passed down, generation to generation, and being remade.
Yeah.
So that just kind of stuff to me like there could have been like information that has been altered because this is the 12th edition from the original copy or just from history itself or how it really happened.
Okay. Okay. Keep that thought, because if I want to argue that if they put something in this book that is not valid historically, remember we were talking about sort of modern history, that means it's scholarly, it means it's peer-reviewed, and that means it's reviewed by other experts in the field. Am I a historian? Why?
You don't have a degree. You have a degree in it?
Like you teach history, but you don't like go into the field of like actually like going back into the past and trying to recover what exactly
What
happened.
do historians do? No. They do study some of them. What do historians do? Hey!
Of course.
Oh.
Hey, Dad, I love you. Oh, yeah. Okay. Anybody see?
She go whoop.
Oh, please.
Deep.
Oh, here it is. Yeah. What was my question? What do historians do? What makes somebody a historian?
Her profession is finding out the past.
Nope.
And truth.
Could I go and read every paper that Andrew Carnegie wrote? Go to some library and read some letters that he wrote, and study them, and tell my family about them, and my friends about them, and all that stuff, and call myself a historian? I could.
You can call yourself, but you
Would I be one?
Not necessarily.
I mean, yeah.
So what is history, and what is a historian?
Historians write about history.
Could I? Do you know any of these people who just like love trains and they learn and study everything about trains, and they wrote a book about trains, and it's sold at the local bookstore, and it's all about trains, and the history of trains, and it's about the railroad tracks, and the different kinds of cars. You know any people like that? What do they think what are they studying? What do they think they're studying? Yeah, trains, and sometimes they think they're like doing history. Is that history though? John, what do you think?
History is his story.
Keep going.
I was going to say a historian doesn't necessarily he knows the facts, but he also wants to know like why certain events happen, like looking back what the internal causes of what started certain things, like what was going on in people's minds that makes them do certain things.
Okay. So let's say, for example, I study everything there is about trains, and I write a paper arguing that the trains are really what enabled the national economy, you with me? The national economy to get established. And I argue that, and then I put all my arguments together, and I write up this big pretty paper, and I put it on the coffee table in my house. Am I a historian?
No, I don't think so.
What if I submitted it to a group of professionals who make their living producing history, like the Organization of American Historians? Most of them tend to be professors at schools, at colleges. And I said, here, I got a history of the impact of trains on American civilization. The editor of this organization would take my paper and give it, if they thought it was worthy of it, they would give it to experts on that period of history, scholars who had studied trains, people who had had scrutinized and published information on that topic. Does that make sense? If those other experts, because can you imagine, I mean, think of the field of medicine. If I wrote a paper arguing that leeches were a more effective treatment of infected cuts than antibiotics, could I get published in a medical journal?
It might not be a very good medical journal.
But would they publish that? Would they publish that?
Yeah, it was a solid.
Oh, if it was a solid thing, but it's not, right? That's not true.
Yeah.
If I'm a doctor and I get my journal and I want to keep up with what's going on in my field, do I want to read an article about some nutcase who thinks that leeches are better than antibiotics? I don't want to read that. So I'm a busy professional. The idea is you submit that paper, we submit it to experts. If it makes a valuable contribution to the field and it's not crazy, which means they check your footnotes, they check your bibliography, they see if you're nuts, and it doesn't mean they agree with you. It can be very controversial. It can be, I don't agree with you at all, but your sources are valid, the point is interesting, it makes a contribution, we're going to publish it. And then if I get this journal, this professional journal, then I can trust that what's in here is not crazy. Does that make sense? So my point is, for it to be what we're going to call history, it's got to be peer reviewed by a group of experts, usually scholars in the field. There are some people like Barbara Tuchman, and is one of my favorites, and Doris Kearns Goodwin. They are not professors. They are not teaching scholars, but they've written books where they very careful footnotes, very careful, great bibliographies, and when they write their work, they've been scrutinized to death by experts in the field, and their work is so good, it's generally embraced by that community. Does that make sense? And you could do that too. You could write a really good paper with really good sources and all that, and actually make a contribution to something. They have student versions of this, actually. Okay? So, but my point is, just studying the past, studying some subject, knowing a lot about it does not make you a historian. Okay? You mentioned that this is the 15th edition. If the authors of this text said something crazy, what would happen?
They'll get edited and taken out.
What would their peers? How many academics are often competitive? And they scrutinize everything you say, so if Charles says something stupid, what am I going to do? I'm going to call him out. I'm going to try to...
Debate.
All right?
Come on.
So 15th edition, that's a lot of editions, isn't it? This book's been around a while. That could be a good, beneficial thing. It could be not so beneficial. What else do you find on the cover?
Well, my version is up until 1877.
Okay, so you got a time period there, so you know what time you're studying. What else?
There's multiple authors.
Multiple authors. Who are these people? Let's go. Turn into this page called About the Authors. About the authors. And here's the idea. If you tell me, let's see if you can catch this. Learning is about making changes in the way you think, speak, and act. Okay? That's what learning is. I'm trying to get you to make some changes in the way you think, speak, and act, if you think they're beneficial. Listen to this. Just lost my train of thought. Oh. If you read something for this class last night, if you read something for a class, and you told me what you learned, and I said, you're wrong, you're a little kid, how would you defend yourself? What said so? The book! You'd say, Mr. Spire, but the book said, and I want you to get that out of your vocabulary. The book doesn't say anything. How do I want you to respond to that? Charles says, I say, Charles, I'm sorry, I think you're off the mark on that one. What are you going to say?
Whatever.
This person said.
Who's the person?
The author.
Yeah, on page, I hate to tell you, Mr. Spires, but on page 374, Kennedy and Cohen pretty much stated that. Do you understand? Do you know where the phrase "the book said" comes from? What's really important in the most dominant religions of the last couple of thousand? The book. I mean, that's when you talk about the book. So I think linguistically that might be where that comes from. I'm not 100% sure of that. I think somebody told me that in some class. But anyway, so let's find out if these people are worth listening to. Because can you imagine somebody getting into one of these chapters and going, I just don't know if I believe that. I just don't know if I buy it. So here we go. David Kennedy is the Donald J. McLaughlin Professor of History and co-director of the Bill Lane Center for the Study of the North American West at Stanford University. Stanford University, a pretty good school? Pretty good. How many people do you think would like to work at Stanford University? How many professor types? If Kennedy says something stupid, how many of them you think would be willing to expose him saying something wrong, invalid, or stupid so they can get his job?
All of them.
You understand? This guy can't say dumb stuff. So if you go off on, well, I just don't know if I believe it. Well, who are you and what have you done? And I don't mean that in the mean way. I just mean think. Do you understand? Okay. Where he is taught for 4 decades. Born and raised in Seattle, received his undergraduate education at Stanford, and he did his graduate training in Yale. Well, there's another second-rate institution, right? So, by the way, if you study history at Stanford and Yale, you probably know things about American history that Joe Blow doesn't. And when you try to tell Joe Blow what you've learned from all your careful study, and Joe Blow goes, well, I just don't know if I believe you. What? Do you understand? I'm not trying to be mean to Joe Blow. But you see this in our culture all the time. People study stuff really carefully for a really long time, and somebody says, oh, I just don't know. I just don't know. Oh, please. Combining fields of history, economics, and literature, wholly interdisciplinary awareness. Batman, his first book, Birth Control in America, interesting, was honored for the Bancroft Prize and this other prize. They're both big prizes. The study of World War I era over here, the First World War in American society, was a Pulitzer Prize finalist. That's a huge prize. My mentor in graduate school told me to take a class just because the guy teaching it had been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. I wasn't interested in the topic of the class, and I told my mentor that, and he said, I don't care, the guy's been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, go work with him and read his book. I was like, yes, sir. In 1999, he published Freedom from Fear, The American People, Depression and War, which won a Pulitzer Prize in history. Holy snap. The English-speaking Union's Ambassador Prize, the Commonwealth, blah, 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 blah. At Stanford, he teaches both undergraduate and graduate courses in American political, diplomatic, intellectual history, and in American literature. He's received teaching awards, blah, 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 blah. PBS Television, The American Experience. He's an elected fellow of this, that, and the other thing. Married and father of two sons and a daughter. In his leisure time, he enjoys hiking, bicycling, river rafting. No way. I thought these guys were dusty old guys with patches on their elbows who just only read books and wrote papers. You know, no. Dude hikes, bikes, river rafts. He flies. You know, I'm guessing in an airplane. Sea kayaking and fly fishing. Lamont might even like this guy. He is currently writing a book on the American. So, is this guy worth paying attention to?
Yeah.
That's kind of my guess. How about this Liz Cohen? Maybe we can dismiss her. She's the Howard Mumford Jones Professor. Yeah, that means a lot to me, but I bet it means something. I bet you could look it up I bet you could Google it and find out that it's a fairly prestigious position. And chair of the History Department at Harvard University. What do you think happens to her if she says something stupid or invalid?
Slapped and fired.
You know.
I don't think they get fired from Harvard.
Do you see what I mean?
Anymore, at least.
And listen, part of the reason why I'm making a deal out of this is sometimes people think I'm out there. I'm not. I've just read a lot of stuff that a lot of people haven't read. And I really don't like it working against me that I did all that work. I mean, think about it. If you studied something super hard for a long time, don't you think you know something that average folks don't know? But then you're going to get it. Anybody, you know, when I love working with guys that work on cars and they know all the little tricks and all that stuff. Show me that trick. You know, I had a guy working on an airplane, and I used to try to do some of the work on my airplane myself, but every time I bring it to my mechanic, that he always has like a special tool or a little trick where he could do something in 30 seconds that took me an hour. You know, so I just stopped trying, and I watch him. So, same with these guys. These guys know stuff about the history of this country that your parents can't imagine. Okay, and I don't want that put on par with some group of people, what these people do. I don't want that on par with what some reading group gets together on Sunday afternoons and talks about the Civil War. You know, those things are not equal. You know, we could get together and slice up some frogs on the weekend and say we could do surgery. You know, no. In 2007-2008, she was the Harmsworth Professor of American History at Oxford University, another shoddy institution. Previously, she taught at New York University and Carnegie Mellon University. Born and raised in the New York metropolitan area, she received her AB from Princeton, yikes, and her MA and PhD from the University of California, Berkeley. Her first book, Making a New Deal, Industrial Workers in Chicago, 1919-39, won the Bancroft Prize in American History and the Philip Taft Labor Award, and was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. Wow. In 2008, it was reissued in a second edition with a new introduction, her article, Encountering Mass Culture and Graduate. By the way, it might be cool when we get into some chapters that involve, like, the Depression era for Kennedy or the New Deal. You can probably guess who did the bulk of that work. And if you were interested in that topic, you got a great source for your bibliography already. We're going to teach you how to do a term paper this year. She explored how the economy and culture was built around mass consumption, shaped social life in politics in post-World War II era, an article related to blah, 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 blah. At Harvard, she teaches courses in 20th century American history with particular attention to the intersection of social and cultural life and politics. Before attending graduate school, she taught history at the secondary school level, so she knows us, and worked in history and art museums. She continued to help develop public history programs, She's married to a historian of modern France, with whom she has 2 daughters. For leisure, they enjoy swimming and biking with her family, watching films and reading fiction. Worth knowing who our people are? Okay? And by the way, if you know this other thing that I told you, this Journal of American History that people submit their work to for review, books and articles, say you wanted to go to Bishop's University or Miami University in Ohio. I just opened the book, there it is. This is a book review written by a professor at Miami University about Anglophilia, deference, devotion, and antebellum America. Wouldn't it be cool to read that book review, find that book, have a little bit of an opinion, maybe look this guy up, read one of his papers, and then go down to your interview at Miami University and say, oh, I'm excited about my interview, and I was wondering if it would be possible to meet with Professor Williams, because I read his book review of this book and it led to some work I did in my American history class. What do you think? What's the admissions person's thinking?
Oh, we want him in our...
You care?
They're thinking, take them. How many people going on admissions tours do you think do that? How hard would it be to do?
Not hard.
Not hard. Not hard. Okay? So a couple things you can get out of this. When you get to college and you spent $1,500 on books, by God, look at them and pay some attention to them before the class starts. You know, look at them, figure out who the author is, Google them, see what they've written. Know who your professor is, Google them, see what they've written. You know, you go in day 1 to class, and the teacher says, hey, how you doing? We're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing that, and da, 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 and you say, you know, this summer I read your paper on thus and such, and I can't wait till we get that part. What are you thinking?
I'd like to do that.
And maybe I'm overdoing it a little bit, and if you're insincere and inauthentic about it, it won't work. But if you're genuinely curious about work that they've done and who you're going to be working with for the year, that could be good information. Okay, cool. Is this killing you? A little bit? Manny, what do you think? Tell me what you think. It's okay.
Fine, killing you.
Boring you to death.
Yeah.
Making you positive. What do you think, Manny? Tell me the truth. You can tell by the tone of my voice, I'm barely believing in it. Not what I'm telling you, but taking the time to do it in the heat and all that stuff.
Keyword.
What do you tell me? What you're thinking?
Man, it's okay. I mean, I'm not super interested in people, but I guess it's good to know about them.
Okay. Here's what I want you to imagine. You're in your dorm. You just spent $1,000 in a bookstore. Right? You get yourself freezing cold beverage. It's air conditioned, and you sit back and you're looking at the stuff you just bought. Now is it a little bit different?
I like it.
It's a little different.
Smell of a new book.
Okay? And what I'm trying to teach you, so many people, if they get assigned a paper or something, they go to the library and they get this big stack of a little. This is where you start. So you start your papers with the course we're in. And know some of this stuff we're talking about before you go in. Okay? I won't. Anybody have a big old map? Like that?
No.
Somewhere in the front? In the back, maybe? Maybe.
Yeah, I did one.
Yeah, you got it in the back?
Yep.
What's this map show? The original 13 colonies.
What's in front of mine?
The original United States. That could be kind of handy dandy to reference, right? What was really sort of the first boundary of the original 13 colonies? First westward boundary. Appalachian Mountains. What was sort of the boundary of the original United States? Mississippi River. What was sort of the westward boundary of the Louisiana Purchase territory? The Rockies. What's the sort of western boundary after that? Pacific Ocean. Geology. Geography. Okay. Okay, cool. So I'm looking around. There's probably some more stuff in there. Table of contents. This is a tool for you. What's the topic of chapter 1? What's the topic of chapter 1? What's that mean?
Chapter 1 here says
What's the topic of chapter 1?
New world beginning.
What does that mean?
How basically I think it's speaking on Jamestown and how the Mayflower hit the shore and the Mayflower Compact and things like that.
Okay.
Living England.
Okay, is that reasonable what he just said? Just reasonable. What's the time period covered in chapter 1? Whoa! When is Jamestown? 16 right? So what's this chapter? This chapter is about stuff that happened way before Jamestown. No, it's a good thing. It means he's thinking, he's engaged, but then you've got a tool here to see, oh, it's about this whole huge time period. Yeah, look in the table of contents here. What are some topics that they talk about? The geology of the New World, the Native American culture before Columbus, Europeans and Africans, Columbus and the early explorers, the ecological consequences of the discovery, the conquest of Mexico and Spain. What did all those things do in the table of contents?
Help you some idea what you have.
No. Here's a skill I want you to develop, and we're going to work on this a lot. The title of the chapter will often tell you the topic of the chapter. So your next job is to figure out what the authors are arguing about that topic. You know what I mean? Okay, this is about the planting. Chapter 2 is about the planting of English America. What are the authors arguing about the planting of English America? That make sense? Here's one called The Rise of Mass Democracy. What are they arguing about that? The American Revolution. What do the authors argue about it? What are you going to argue about it? So immediately you can see that they're talking about geology, Europeans and Africans, and what I need you to do is, what point is all the information in that chapter designed to support? Be on the lookout for that. And you have to take into account everything in the chapter, including the stuff that happened 10,000, 20,000, and 33,000 years ago. And by the way, if we're going to know any dates, they have to have meaning. So you tell me what happened 33,000 years ago is a pretty specific date. pretty specific time. What happened? 1769. What happened? Because those are the bookends for this chapter. That's the time period. Okay. Make sense? Okay. You can do a lot of studying using the table of contents. And people never do. They don't do it. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. Can I ask you not to read something? Look at. This is cool. Just know there are maps in here, a bunch of maps. We're going to look at the maps. There are figures and tables. Look at them. Read them. There's a preface that's all about how the resources of the book and associated things. In some of yours, there might be some stuff about preparing for the AP exam. You don't need that. But here's what I'm going to ask you to do, I think. Can I ask you to not read pages 2 and 3? See these?
Yes, you can.
I don't want you to read these. I want to read those together. After we read chapter 1, and I've never done that before. I don't know if we're going to do one chapter or 2 chapters, but then we're going to go back to this. Okay? 2 and 3. Yeah. I think is it 2 and 3 in everybody's book? Yes. They're usually different colors. Oh, and let me tell you one other thing. When you guys are reading along, and there's this little blue thing up here, do you look at it and study it carefully?
Yes.
Good.
Timeline?
When you get these brown pages, do you read them or skip them?
Depends on my
Do you read the little caption next to the little brown picture?
Yeah.
No, I don't read that stuff. I skip that stuff. How about, I'll try to find a couple of these.
Like, I would read that one.
Do you read these captions?
Yeah, I would read that
Good. Would you read these little brown boxes?
Yeah. Yeah, part of the reading.
Would you read these?
Yeah,
I was forced
I
to.
usually do.
Okay, there's a real tendency not to. Anything, and you can see where I'm going with this, anything of color, a lot of my students tend not to read. I try not to judge them, but I think they're a little bit racist readers. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they
yeah.
only read the stuff that's on white. You know? So, again, I try to hold back on my judgments, but it tends to happen. So I'm going to say, even though you might have some feelings about readings of color, I'm going to ask you to read the content of those boxes and pictures and maps and blah, 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 blah. Okay. What we just did is called previewing the text. You guys, what we just did is called previewing the text. It's a good thing to know how to do. I can teach you how to do the whole thing, but we don't need to do that right now. Thanks for dealing. And I think that's about all I got for you. We good?
Yeah.
It will get cooler before too long.
One day.
Yeah, 89%. Tells me you're noble.
John, you don't play Alright, John. Far to the right, black one. The one that was right beside
Okay, we're going to start assigning like daily jobs for everyone to just be the one to do this.
Yeah, that one, yeah.
Who's in charge of the power script
the
today?
map right there.
Yeah. I like that.
Yes, that one.
No, don't touch my
phone
my
is
power
off,
cord
John.
there.
Not tomorrow.
Tomorrow is Josh Hack. Or Tuesday.
I still put you for next one.
Unfair if you don't use the power
Sure.
cord.
I went first.
Right, if you don't use the power cord, that's pretty unfair.
Trey went the first day and everyone
Not everybody uses the power cord. Most people
Well,
charge their
my phone
laptops
always
at
dies.
night.
So do I just use them in every
No, I
class.
mean, your phone
Since I'm a Jimmy guy, I should.
You don't charge yours at night.
If
You're
I
using the
my
morning.
phone dies in this class.
Nah, man, I'm
It has to go through
Okay,
a long
the
day.
one that I had. Shut up!
I'm down for a cradle.
That's what I'm going to fix tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday, right?
That means everybody dies.
Fix tomorrow. I'll have a computer by Monday.
Well, they're getting this thing now.
Oh God.
Shut up.
You're only the first person to tell me that today.
What?
Shut up.
Shut up.
Oh wait, no, never mind. Nora was the first.
Pretty sure everyone said this to you at least twice today.
Okay, that was unnecessary.
That was.
I mean, I agree, but that was unnecessary.
Oh, wow, my shoulders are still sore.
Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. Alright, where do you want this book?